Reporter NFL Network Jane Slater. Follow her on Twitter at Slater NFL. All right, let's talk about this. Andy Dalton's a Cowboy. You have insight. You always do. You have great sourcing there, Jane. So take us through what happened with Andy Dalton's contract with the Cowboys.
I don't know. I wanted to go through our vices, guys. That was like the more entertaining topic. I think a lot of people saw this Andy Dalton signing, and as with anything that happens in Dallas, and as I explained to somebody on this new coaching staff, when they sort of dismiss these things, I say, look, if the third-string running back costs, we're talking about it in Dallas. So, you look at a guy like Andy Dalton, who, like Dak Prescott, just two of just 6 quarterbacks in the NFL history, won at least 40 games in their first 4 years, a guy that, is a bona fide starter. There are going to be conspiracy theorists. It's going to trigger a lot of people wondering if Mike McCarthy is now all of a sudden out on Dak. Is the Jones family frustrated with Todd France and him playing hardball with the contract? I have talked to a number of people on this, both close to Andy and close to the Cowboys, and I'm being told that it is nothing more than an insurance policy. And, kind of like with the draft when CeeDee Lamb fell to them at 17, Andy Dalton fell to them by virtue of this pandemic. The Cowboys had reached out to his agent ahead of him getting released from the Bengals. They stayed in touch, and ultimately the agent let them know as soon as he got cut, and the Cowboys made an offer. Now, I liken this a lot to what the Saints did with Teddy Bridgewater. He was paid about the same. I think his was about $7-8 million, and it was an insurance policy, that you'll remember the Saints needed when Drew Brees got hurt. And then Teddy Bridgewater was able to turn that around, flip it, and go get himself a starting job with Carolina. I think being close to home, having a guy like Mike McCarthy, who's going to be your coach, a guy that you can now get into these virtual OTAs, because we've tried to pin the Cowboys down on this, but if Dak Prescott were in the OTAs, they just would have said it. They didn't say that. They danced around it. So I do think it's important that you have a quarterback in there learning this offense, that while they're keeping a lot of the foundation there are things that are different. So you're getting Andy Dalton in there, but I don't expect this is going to be a guy that's going to necessarily replace Dak Prescott. I'm told they're still high on Dak, and that Dak is, in fact, their guy. But I even look at Andy Dalton as a guy that's going to be a little bit more of a credible Mark Sanchez. Dak Prescott did so good his rookie season because he had a guy like Mark Sanchez in the room, helping him, sharing some of just his veteran wisdom of what he was seeing from opposing defenses and the way to look at the approach of the offense. And then, we had Mike McCarthy telling us even ahead of the draft, we want to bolster this position. We drafted guys in Green Bay and used them as trade pieces. And I look at Ben DiNucci, who was on our Boys and Girl podcast. It's on the iHeartRadio network. He was so impressive, a guy who told us, when I said, how is this virtual OTA thing going to work for you as a rookie trying to learn the offense? He said, it's not a big deal. I had 5 different offenses when I was in college. So I think what they're doing is they're just bolstering the room. They're putting more emphasis on this backup quarterback position, something they have not done in a very, very long time. And they just got lucky this year by virtue of this pandemic and Andy Dalton wanting to stay close to home.
Yeah. Do you think we'll see more of these moves by the Cowboys? Little bits and pieces picking up here and there?
It's interesting. They have certainly been so much more aggressive than what we're used to. I mean, when I'm just looking at what they've done with, we don't have all the guaranteed terms on Daryl Worley or Don Terry Poe, but we do know that they've at least spent $17 million in guaranteed money on outside free agents this offseason. And just, again, by looking at the context of what they paid, what they've essentially gone out and they paid Andy Dalton, we haven't seen them pay an outside free agent this sort of money, annual value money, since Greg Hardy in 2015. I don't feel like Mike McCarthy and his staff are looking for project guys anymore. I think it goes back to the same thing we saw in the draft. We don't want guys that necessarily just fit into the system. Show me the best player available. And when you look at what they've done, with even the possibility of Alden Smith getting reinstated, Ron Slavin, his agent, as we taped our Boys and Girl podcast that's going to drop tomorrow, he talked about the fact that he's already back here in the Dallas area and he plans on getting back to work very, very soon, and how excited Alden is. And anyone that's been around Alden is seeing his commitment and, the change of just his mentality and his work ethic. And he's bigger and stronger than he was even with the 49ers. They're making some power moves. And on paper, this looks like a hell of a football team, but we've also seen this team look like a hell of a football team on paper before and then it not translate into the season. So, but I just look at some of the depth that they're creating at some of these positions, and this is a really, really good team that Will McClay and Mike McCarthy and his staff are putting together.
Yeah. So you don't think it's any message to Dak at all? It's just a signing.
No, and look, again, if you go back to training camp with the Cowboys last year, I know a lot of people were like, oh my gosh, Ezekiel Elliott is holding out and they just signed Alfred Morris. Alfred Morris knows this offense. We don't need Zeke, Alfred Morris can be the starter. That wasn't the case. It was an insurance policy. I still believe that this deal is going to get done by July. Of course, I said this last summer, and so I'm a little shocked that it hasn't gotten done. But I've literally received no indication that they are out on Dak or that Dak is not their guy. I just think there was a guy like Andy Dalton that was available that they got lucky on, just like I feel like they got really lucky in this year's draft. And what seemed like Murphy's Law for the Cowboys for a long time, anything that could go wrong did. All of a sudden, anything that can go right for them is. So I think that's kind of just been a fascinating shift for the Cowboys lately.
Good stuff, Jane Slater, NFL Network. Jane, good talking to you. Next time we'll ask you about your vices. You could give us one vice. Do you have one vice that you'd like to talk about?
Okay, I'm losing weight in quarantine because I'm not eating. My vice is McDonald's. When I leave the Cowboys facility, I will sometimes order 3 cheeseburgers, no onions, a large fry, and a regular soda. And I work out like crazy, and at 39, it's getting harder and harder to keep it tight. But I haven't been able to go to McDonald's. And so these days, I am eating an entire bucket of hummus with tortilla chips. So I got to watch myself because I sort of get going. My OCD takes over, and right now it's hummus and tortilla chips. There are worse vices. I feel like McDonald's a lot worse, but yeah, I got to cut it out. It's bad.
You go, girl. We're there for your support. We're your support group if you have to call us about your hummus addiction. We do appreciate that. Jane Slater, she does such a great job. Thanks, Jane. Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.